Good evening and welcome to today's presentation on the new academic hub building by Professor Christopher Benninger. To begin with, I'd like to invite Dr. Bimal Patel to give a broad overview of the CEPT master plan and how this new building fits into the master plan. Dr. Bimal Patel.
Okay, thank you everybody for coming here. I'm very happy that this is, I think the third or the fourth such presentation about how the CEPT campus is developing. The first one started with the library building, and the second one was about the workshop and the library building. And I think this is the third one now about the academic hub building. So it's I think an important tradition for CEPT as things happen here. They are presented first in the town hall, so to say, for everybody to ask whatever questions and make whatever comments they want. So please feel free after the presentation to ask questions of the architect and of me about what this campus expansion is about. So welcome all. When we started working on the campus expansion plan, Christopher was very much part of that. There were 3 or 4 or 5 objectives. I'm not going to take up too much time today. There's garbas to be attended afterwards. Let me just, and I'm not going to make a full presentation, but just to remind everybody about where the different buildings are coming up. I just want to say before I show you those drawings, about our campus, that there were 3 or 4 objectives in all this recent addition of buildings. First is, of course, we want to expand space. We had only 1.6 lakh square feet of space, and that we were using for all the things that we're doing at CEPT, and everybody knows that we are stressed for space, and one objective of, well, the campus expansion is expansion of space. Second objective is to improve the quality of facilities. We've been doing a lot to try and improve and upgrade the quality of facilities, lighting, faculty cabins, doors, furniture, all sorts of things that will improve the quality of facilities. So that's another objective. A larger objective, of course, is to make an architectural statement about what a campus for a university such as ours is. And in a simple form, the idea is, can we use diverse architectures and still hold them together in a unity? And that's the idea. So we had we want to show that it is possible to have great amount of diversity, and yet the campus comes together as one. And I hope that this idea gets fulfilled, and this campus becomes a way of showing how you can have unity despite a lot of diversity. The buildings in and of themselves also are meant to be as vehicles for learning for the students, so that the type of buildings we build and the sort of architectural vocabulary, technology that they use, etc., become demonstrations of what fine architecture can be about. So for us, where many of the students are engaged in architecture, design, urban design, and in the larger sense in the habitat issues, this becomes a way of demonstrating what really a good place can be like. And it's on that journey that we are on. This journey is going to go on. It started off with the campus as it looked in 2012 or 15, that just that far back, yeah. And the first thing that got done was demolition of some of these older buildings and facilities, and the addition of 3 new important facilities. Many of you have seen the library that has come up, that has added almost 30 to 32,000 square feet of space. Remember, I told you that we had 160,000 square feet, so it's an important addition. It's the hub of the academic hub in some sense of the campus. And you know much about the library. I don't need to say much about that. The CEPT workshop has just got commissioned. Those of you who haven't seen it, that's also worth going and taking a look at. They've just started using it since the last 3 or 4 weeks, if I'm correct. And the CEPT workshop is by, the architecture for that is Professor Gurdev Singh. The architecture for the library, of course, is Rahul Mehrotra, and the architecture of the new canteen also is done by Rahul Mehrotra. So the canteen will be ready in another 2-3 months, I hope, after Diwali, so that that corner, which always used to be full of life, once again will be full of life, and that building should be ready. The plaza is sort of slowly falling into place, and so that much is already done. That new toilet block that we were going to add did not get going because of lack of money, but we will get it going soon. That's the library you've seen. That's the new workshop building. The workshop, that's the new canteen building that is being built right now. So that will bring the campus up to that point. After that, the next phase, and it's not really the next phase, this is what we hope to do, but what we are going to start off with is the academic facilities building, and that is being designed by Professor Christopher Benninger, and that's what we are going to see today. We are hoping that these 2 new buildings, the CEPT laboratory here and the canteen, South Canteen, gets going, but this might get revised as we go along. Once that is done, we will probably knock out this university office building, and either a technology building or faculty of management building will come up. But these plans are up in the air just now. We're going to start with this building here and then see what happens next. I'm not going to spend too much time on that. So that's where we are. Finally, at the end, we hope that someday we can reorganize this plaza in some way so that we get the artistic center revised and this FT building really becomes a part of the plaza here. And that's very long-term plan, so let's just see where we are. Let me just stop at this point and say let's get on with the presentation that Christopher is going to do. But before that, let me just say, well, Christopher needs no introduction to Ahmedabad. He came here to Ahmedabad in the early 70s. He was already teaching at Harvard. He was an assistant professor there, tenured professor, but he got, he said that is not for him, and he came here to set up the School of Planning. And the School of Planning at CEPT he's the founder of that school, along with Professor Doshi at that time, and that's when it got going. He then left from here, went to Pune, and set up CDSA, Center for Development Studies and Activities. That is an institute for urban planning also. And from there, he did vast amounts of planning work all across India, Bhutan, Sri Lanka, and had a whole rich career in planning. And then finally, he got fed up of urban planning, and he started off in the world of architecture. CDSA campus was one of his first buildings here, and a superb place. For those of you who have seen it, I'm sure you admire the place a lot. He then sort of got involved in the world of architecture, so that was like his second life. And he's an architect who is, in some ways, like a bridge architect from the older generation, which had people like Korea and Doshi and Kanvinde and Hasmukh and various other such people, and younger people like me. And so he's sort of in between. He has one foot in that world at the back there, and he is taking on completely all the challenges that the new India is throwing at architects. So he works on industrial buildings, he works on institutional buildings, he works on colleges, he works on all sorts of buildings, and taking on new technologies, dealing with the new language that clients are using, and that is what is really fascinating. He's a person who is he's really engaged totally with the challenges that India is throwing and coming up with great answers. I don't want to say much more about him because it doesn't need to be said, not much to be said. He's a great friend of CEPT University. He's on the board of management of CEPT University. And what's really special about him as a friend of CEPT University is that anytime you ask him for help or support, he's there with all his time, energy, and enthusiasm. And I can assure you that CEPT is a great place because there are so many such people who want to give to this institution as if it is their own and want to work for it and make this a rich place of learning and an important sort of center for architecture, planning, urban design, technology, construction. It's great because all the people who give to it freely, and Christopher is definitely at the forefront of people who are giving. So Christopher, I'm very happy to have you here, and let's see what you have for us, and let's see what people have to say about it.
Well, first I must thank Bimal for a lovely introduction. I must thank all of you for coming here to look at my humble presentation. Before I start, I should tell you that I like to tell stories. Is it possible to turn off that light? It's blaring right in that light. Architects. It's blaring right in my eyes. That light. Can we turn it off? I have to give a lecture like this. Can we turn it off? I'm not interested in photographers because I can't see anything. See, I like to tell stories. So first story is that I did not come here in 1971 to start the School of Planning. I came here in 1968, and 69 is a Fulbright fellow. And I liked adventure. To me, architecture and design are all adventures. They're self-exploration. They're self-discovery. So what I was doing when I was your age, the students here, I rode a bicycle 3,000 kilometers from Paris to Athens because I wanted to meet Doxiades. And then I attended a Delos symposium with many of the great thinkers of our time. When I came to India in 1971 to start the School of Planning, I came overland. And that was exciting because I didn't have visas for countries like Turkey, Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan. But you just played it by ear. Those were days maybe when things were more open, but I could explore. And coming to Ahmedabad was a place of love. And even sitting here in the room today, there are people like Arvind Talati. I wonder how many people here know who the hell is Arvind Talati. Well, Arvind Talati is a young man who worked in Le Corbusier's office from 1954 to 1957. Do you know that there's a person sitting right here who worked in Le Corbusier's office? You want to stand up, Arvind? Just stand up for a second. To me, it's very exciting. This would be the only school of design, architecture, planning, where you would have such people who just walk into a place to hear a presentation. An old friend of mine, Chandubai Pandey, is also a senior person. His son, you all know Kiran, he's a great designer. In the early 70s, I used to go to Bhavnagar and see a house that Kiran designed. It was very inspiring. There are other people here. I have to mention a few names like Vivek Kudpekar. Why? When I came in 1968, Doshi tricked me into staying into what was called M Block. The students of architecture refused to move into Doshi's hostel. So when I came, he said, Christopher, I'm giving you your own room. You don't have to share with anybody else. Go there. And I go into this practically empty hostel. And the next few days, some of the guys from architecture start moving over there, saying that, oh, you got your own room. We're 3-4 people in a room in the old hostels now. So see, then the whole gang came over there. And one of the first to come was Vivek Kudpekar. He's sitting here. He incidentally edited my book, Letters to a Young Architect. Sheikh here edited the Gujarati edition. So there are people sitting here, I can't name them all, who have been very much involved in my career. And I thank them all. My managing director and partner, Ram Prasad Naidu, is here. He's worked with me on this presentation. and other things. So having said all these things, let me see if I can learn how to operate this funny machine. I think I have to push. If I had my flashlight, I would see the, oh, this is it.
Yeah.
Okay, which?
Just right one.
I push right.
Yes.
This
Yeah,
one?
yeah.
Okay. Nothing happened. Everybody recognize that building? This is a building that I knew about before I heard of India. Seriously. Every kid architect in America knew that Le Corbusier was building a building in India, the Mill Owners Association. And this was one of the draws, one of the things that attracted me to coming to this great city called Ahmedabad. And this is a building which I still like because, look, it has green plants growing on the walls. Architects do this today and they think it's the latest thing that ever happened now. And this has irrigation in the walls now. And it has wind blowing through the building. It has a lot of things in it which people think are really red hot inventions today. Now here's a building by Louis Kahn. People of my generation are lucky. We actually met Louis Kahn in India, in the building next door, in Philadelphia, in his office with Anand Rajay, and he was a living person. So this is something that attracted me to come here also. These were great monuments for young students of architecture back in the 60s. No? But when I actually landed up in this city, what did I find? Gandhi Ashram. I liked Gandhi Ashram better than I liked the Milliners building. Less monumental, more open. There was inside-outside spaces like this veranda. There were louvers to let the air blow through, some traditional tile on the roof. But you can see Le Corbusier's influence here. You can see the exposed concrete. You can see the exposed brick. And you can see that Charles was looking at Corbusier and Kahn as mentors, but he was desperately trying to surpass them. And he was doing very Indian architecture with open spaces, human scale, breeze blowing through, verandas, etc. And that's what attracted me to Ahmedabad. Now, look at this one. This is a building done by Hasmukh C. Patel. Now, Hasmukh C. Patel was so wonderful. He actually came here tonight. And he came in his automated wheelchair back to the back. And then he decided he wouldn't let you youngsters carry him down these stairs. But Hasmukh Bhai was for 15 years the head of this institution. I wonder how many people here know that. That when I was starting the School of Planning, he was head of the School of Architecture, and Doshi was our dean. So we had a dean and two directors, and that was in the small building next door, and that was the life here. But this building always influenced me. Look, it has open spaces, covered spaces, verandas. It's on a module. So there are so many lessons in the Xavier School. I wonder whether you students have visited Xavier School. I think all of you should visit the Gandhi Ashram and Xavier's School if you haven't been there. Have a look at those buildings. Now guess which building this is. None of you would recognize this. No? This is called the School of Architecture at Ahmedabad. It was probably designed around 1962. I don't know when it was actually finished, but it was finished by 1968 when I came here. Again, like Xavier's and like Gandhi Ashram, it has under the ground spaces in the shade. It has skylights facing north, not south. It exposes materials naturally. And all of these things became lessons for me and things that inspired me and made me want to stay on in India. It's true, I was an assistant professor at Harvard. That was a very esteemed post at the time, but I left that when Doshi said, come back and start the School of Planning. So I came back, and I want to just tell you a couple of the things I did before I started designing a building itself. This is what used to be called the Alliance Française in Ahmedabad. It's in the back of the Theological College, which is near Gujarat College. It's back in the corner of a plot. I wanted to create a small public domain. Now, I think as an architect, creating outdoor spaces, experiential spaces outdoors is very important. And another thing you'll notice on this building is that the blue are lights, skylights, facing north. So you see, when I saw the School of Architecture and the skylights facing north, I said, hey, Doshi's pretty smart now. He knows that you can give space by dropping light into spaces now. So why don't I also have north-facing skylights? So that idea came out. And I only pulled the windows down the north wall in the back. The east, west, and south have no windows at all. They only have pivoting doors back in corners. And it's an exposed brick building. The toilets are plugged in the back like an archigram building. And we always do in our office something called exploded isometrics. So this is an exploded isometric of the Alliance Francaise, a simple building, not more than 6 materials. You know, people in America, they praise me. They say, your early work was so nice. You only had 6 materials now. You used so few materials. And I said, see, we didn't have any more materials back then. It's not that we really wanted to be terribly honest now, but the reality was you either exposed them or you covered them with a cheap plaster which cracked and fell off. So I think it's true we did develop a language out of exposed concrete, exposed brick, but the point is that we had very few choices of materials. Today we could build a building and we can put more than 100 materials without even batting an eye. Well, Alliance Francaise was a fun building. I did it as a hobby in 1973 to 74, 75. It was built, and this is the interior. The whole building, in a way, I looked at Haus Muckbei's Xavier's, which was built on squares and subdivision of squares into modules for structure and spaces. This is the same thing. We did feet and inches back then. Why? Mysteries and carpenters couldn't read metric drawings, no? So we had feet and inches, and this is based on 15 foot by 15 foot square floor plan, 7.5 by 7.5 square pivoting doors, 5.5 beams on center, creating skylights like these ones in the top, 5 feet on center, and these wrapped 5 feet back down the walls in there. And then you had little tiny openings, 2.5 feet by 2.5 feet, and life became very simple because you worked on that module, you had 5 materials, and all you had to do was become a little creative, and you could do an Alliance Francaise. So the next building that I built of any consequence was something called CDSA, Center for Development, Studies and Activities. Now, this I did for my favorite client, a very difficult person named Christopher Benninger. I like to design buildings for him because the arguments take place all day, but they are continually getting resolved. I see the commonality between the Ahmedabad school of thought and what I brought to Pune. Exposed materials. We don't have good brick there, but we have basalt stone. We could use exposed concrete. I could use tile on the roof like Gandhi Ashram, and I could make a public domain, which is the center of the campus. So that was an early experiment. Again, it was more like something I did for myself, but it was a language which I was developing on modules, using natural material, exposing things honestly, trying to get some through ventilation, and making very simple spaces. And then later, in this same vocabulary, I did something called the Mahindra United World College of India, which is the same language, but it's a totally different non-rectilinear, angular kind of poetry. It's not an essay, but it's more like a poem, but it's quite functional, actually. In the middle is an academic quadrangle, again with a public domain. All the classrooms around, they leak out into courtyards, so people can study inside and outside. And these are kind of principles that we started working on. Again, in our office, we always blow things up. So that's an exploded isometric, which allows us to see the floor plan, the walls, and the roof. This building started off as rectilinear blocks, but then when I went there and started sketching, I saw the mountains around, and I wanted to pull those mountains into the campus as kind of a borrowed landscape. So the buildings themselves started taking on these angles, and we did it in such a way that we could make the rooms very functional. They're not really as angular as they look, and sometime maybe you could study that plan and have a look at it. Now, getting closer to home. This is a building, one of the first buildings I did in my youth when I was about 52. I started my practice when I was in my 50s. Ram and I met, and we decided let's start a studio. And this is the Cochin Refinery's headquarters building in Kochi. And what I want to show you here is this is a building where the client wanted a corporate building with a glass envelope. So I said, yeah, but you know, if we have a glass envelope, you have to air condition this building because you're corporates and you have free energy because you have Cochin Refineries. But what kind of example are you setting? What if we put a screen of louvers around the glass so that when you slide the glass windows open, you get ventilation coming through? And so sometimes it's very pleasant in Kerala. You don't need to run your AC. And even when you're running the AC, it cuts about 30% off of the energy to run this building. So we did a study and showed that in 21 years, by the savings in AC running costs, they could pay for the whole damn building. So they agreed to do this. They put louvers, Hunter Douglas louvers around the whole building. And then years later, we did something called the Samudra Maritime Institute. That's in Lunala. Now here we wanted to do another experiment. We said, can we generate energy on site? Can we use photovoltaic cells and generate electricity? So this huge workshop is one of the large buildings on site. It's 90 meters long. And we made the whole south-facing wall out of photovoltaic cells, and it generates electricity. So, and this becomes, instead of sticking them on the ground someplace and making a farm out of them, it becomes an integral part of the building. In fact, it lets lovely light come through into the workshop. And in their administration building, we did this kind of Miro-looking, Modrian-looking elevation where we used photovoltaic cells also. So integrating somehow energy saving, sustainable methods into the design of the building is something which is fun. This is Suzlon One Earth, you all may know. It's supposed to be one of the greenest buildings in the world. This is a picture of the training center, inside-outside spaces, again, something learned in Ahmedabad, lotus pools, over instantly a large parking facility, an underground basement. And this building uses all kinds of things. You can see windmills there. You can see in the roof of this space. This is a very traditional space, but it has photovoltaic cells over the top, and it generates electricity. We could manage in this project to generate about 9% of the energy requirements on site, and then we have a wind farm for the remaining energy off, so we don't have any carbon taking. The other thing we tried to do in this project is bring into the picture some traditional features like a deep stone, Brahmastan, and we have overhanging roofs again, and we have louvers in all of the walls to stop the sun hitting. But when you look at this photograph, it looks like there's no louvers at all. You can see right into the office because these are sloped louvers and they reflect light onto the ceiling and cut the cost of running luminaires. So these are kind of things which I think we could look forward to. We could try to do it here. I like using louvers. I like using, even these are in India House. Our office is on the left, house is on the right. And these are movable louvers, so we can adjust the sunlight. If it's too bright or if it's too dark, we can change them. Or even if we want privacy across the courtyard between the studios and the house, we can adjust the louvers. And then one of the longest envelopes that I did is this 110-meter long huge boiler workshop for the Forbes family in Chakan near Pune. This again is just simple aluminum sheets with a louver cut out. We used software to find out what percentage of the jolly to leave open to let how much heat and light in, and came at some optimums, and we worked it out. The idea is that they get free lighting through the glass wall behind which they wanted, and we as sustainable architects could cut down on the heat gain and grid-free electricity. This is another factory in Pune. It's the Krone shop. It also uses these kind of jollies. So what I'm really trying to say in those buildings is that we can use envelopes to try to cool down buildings. Now, people here asked me to come and design this building. We've been looking at it for maybe the last year or so. I call it the academic hub. I don't know what we really want to call it in the end, but it has what? This is kind of the client's brief. There were many other things besides this. It has an auditorium for 500 people. It has lecture halls, 4 of them, for 80 people. But these are actually multi-purpose spaces. They could also join together and be a studio for 160 people or maybe 100 people. Then we have 8 classrooms for 40 people. And we have 8 seminar rooms for around 25 to 30 people. And other amenities like an elevator for disabled people to move between floors. Of course, toilets and utility shafts, etc. And we're also proposing perhaps to put photovoltaic cells on the roof to generate electricity and other such activities. Now, my eyesight isn't really good enough to look at this, but this would be available. We'll put it on the web. These are the areas and the whole area statement. Now, this was a fun thing which I did on Monday. You're all students, so you like to do these things. But I was trying to think, what was it that led me to this design? Well, part of it, of course, is always the design brief, what the client wants. Then there's something called the context. This building's going to sit on a corner. There's a sinkhole there kind of with water in it in the monsoon. We've got to look at available technologies. And then there's the lifestyle of all you youngsters. Now, it's not that you come to class here and you go in and listen to just lectures. It's not just teaching, but it's also learning. And learning takes place inside, outside. It takes place in the in-between spaces. So the campus life, I put Kamaram, because even people sleep on their desks in this university. It's a very strange university. And so I thought the lifestyle here is important. And then where they overlap, I looked at the context. It's next to one of Doshi's buildings. It has a link to the plaza. It has a link to the entrance to the university. So there's something called movement, pause, and hinges. There's some sort of urban design, environmental things happening. You're welcome to turn off your cell phone. Whose cell phone was that? You get killed in my office if you have cell phones, no? Okay. Then there's an overlap between the context and the technology. That has a lot to do with sustainability. And then between the client's brief and technology has to do with systems performance. And then I look at all these things. How does the envelope of the building come in? How does the structure come in? How does the MEP come in? Et cetera. And how do the spaces and volumes? Now, Arnold Shaw is working with me on the structure. I don't know if he could make it today. I asked him to come. I hope he's here. And these are the kind of things, starting with big things like the design brief and the campus lifestyle, the physical context, technology, comes down into the design. And Abimel has already showed you a plan of the campus, and he's told you that this is going to come here. I call it academic hub. The other red thing is not on the cards right now, but it could become a research center later. And we have something that I have to take note of. This, I marked it green, is our lawn. This lawn is probably more famous than the School of Architecture. More things happen here 7 by 24 than any place else on campus. No? So I realized that if I want to make headlines in Gujarat, I can bulldoze the green space. Right? But I think I would be killed if I did that. So I love the green space. When I came here, even there were a couple of our classmates who used to pitch tents and sleep on top of the grass. No? And it's a lovely thing, and it's something that I have to address too. Another thing is, back in the back corner, there's a jungle, and many people may not even know what happens in that jungle, but during the monsoon, it becomes a big pool of water. So I thought, can we exploit that water? Maybe we can make some kind of a coon there, or some kind of a pool. Maybe we can line it in some ways to save water. And we should actually do something called a campus water management plan. Actually, if you see the total volume of the water stored there, I haven't calculated it, but it looks like a lot because it floods. But if you see this whole catchment area of the campus, everything drains into that one hole. I think we could develop a campus water management plan where we had cisterns and gullies running horizontally to take water to cisterns and save it for the rest of the year, for the dry season. So this blue water thing is important. And then there will be, I don't think it shows here, yeah, it shows. There will be roads around two sides, and there's a proposed road to run perhaps in between Ahmedabad University and ours. It may be built, it may not. It's something that we've talked about. And then you have the iconic academic buildings that Doshi designed. And this is something which I'm very sensitive about. Doshi is a great guru. He's been a friend of mine for decades, so I want to give due respect to that. And the new plaza. Now, the plaza was a dust bowl for decades, and I think it's slowly becoming, I don't want to overblow it, but I'll just call it the Piazza San Marco. Okay, it's not the Piazza San Marco, but it's important, and it's where you'll do dances, you'll do national and international programs, you'll have your convocations, and it's a wonderful new iconic feature. And another new iconic feature is the library. I just walked over there today before coming in, and I think it's a very exciting building. Wonderful spaces, intriguing little details, and it's a great addition to the campus. So we have, the lawn, we have the School of Architecture, we have the plaza, we have an iconic library, and our building somehow has to relate to this. So there's kind of a hinge taking place at the corner where Bimal has suggested I build this building. People come from the road and they enter. They come from the plaza, they'll come from the new canteen. They'll cross through when we do this research area. And this becomes kind of a hinge that connects a big part of the campus together. A huge number of students will be studying in this area. So I looked at it like this, that there would be in front of the School of Architecture something I'm calling the campus promenade. You'll see it later in the plans, that connect all these other connectors together. And I would love, we have a connection from the entrance on University Road right up to this building. I would like to see more people walking under the School of Architecture. And of course, there's a link past the canteen to the new academic hub. So these are all things which affected my work on the design. I hope I'm not pressing it too fast and missing anything. Well, one of the important things to note is that the road is going to be widened. We're going to lose land. And then the new setback is going to be from that 4.5 meter road widening. So altogether, we're going to lose about 10.5 meters. That's a lot, so I had to work in that setback. And then I had a kind of a footprint that I could do. I couldn't go into the lawn, I couldn't go into the water. And look at that. There are 3 trees on the thing. I was going to rag Arthur, and Arthur's chairman of a committee. I was going to tell everybody that Arthur told me just cut down the trees. But Arthur didn't say that. He said, you can't cut them down. You have to do something. So he and I have been talking to tree surgeons, tree doctors. How do you save these? No? And then we thought, one day Bill and I walked out there with Arthur and Ram and a group, and we said, your building, which is a rectangle, actually has kind of 3 parts, and maybe you have to slide them apart. Maybe you have to slide them to save these trees. So if you look at this, the building actually takes a shape where it slides apart. And I don't think this particular thing is working because we made some sexy thing where the building actually moves in front of you and slides to save these trees. And even we made a little niche here around the bottom tree, number 2, to try to save that a little bit more. Where is that? That little niche. So we're making an effort to save these trees. They're kind of iconic, and they can be, with tree doctors, they can be made better. But we'll even have to do a kind of auto around the 3rd tree. It's a very big old tree. It will try to have to save them. So the context, the location between the lawn and between this water body, having the University Avenue and the University Road running by it, being at a corner, which could become something I'm calling a hinge, the campus pinwheels around. These were all contextual things which affected my thinking. And then we have a site plan with the ground floor of the School of Architecture, the canteen, which was just an idea when I started designing. And I thought, in the site plan, and we discussed this in our committee here, let's put the auditorium on the ground floor. Why? People might come there at night. They don't want to walk all the way up to the top floor. And we can use that large entrance space to the auditorium as a kind of a portal or an entry into this new academic hub. And we can keep toilets there. We'll have that round figure as a small elevator. And it can be kind of, again, a hinge. It will be a public space which is covered from the sun and also the monsoon, but it becomes kind of a hinge in this thing. Now, these are some major activities. We've thought of having a new sort of a tower for research in it, because all great universities do great research. So there's an exhibition space under that tower. There's a hangout meditation zone around the water. There's a gathering space in the auditorium. There's a relax and talk space on the grass. And then there's these move and walk spaces, the entrance and the move out to the main plaza. And then I would like to see a promenade in front of the School of Architecture where you're moving into this new building, and you can also look under the School of Architecture up into the plaza. So we started developing floor plans around this idea. And this was the first ground floor plan. You might notice that the lawn is higher, so it actually goes up onto a wall on the side of the auditorium, and on the west side, the auditorium actually has a glass wall out into kind of a little amphitheater kind of steps. We will have to build a concrete waterproof wall. We would be very embarrassed after finishing this building, and we would bring the board of management there, and it would be full of water. So we don't like to do buildings that get full of water. Pune, we learned how to do buildings underground with water because we have rivers every place. And we've done a lot of work with waterproofing, underground parking, India House Art Gallery, and other places where the water table is much higher than the basement. So this is a rough idea of the ground floor. It's got a large auditorium. It has something like this platform on one side, on this side over here. And then on the other side, we could even slide doors open into the outside. So you can even sit outside. Let me see if I can find this. That's the underground part, just to show that it does go below ground slightly, about 4 meters actually. Then this is the ground level, and on the right is the earth mound, and then the first floor. Now the first floor, it has a bridge connecting to the canteen at the bottom that goes by that tree called 02. There's a bridge that goes straight from the canteen up just a few stairs and then crosses over onto the first floor of the academic building, where you have 2 large classrooms, 3 regular kind of classrooms, and 3 seminar halls, some toilets. And then the next level, you go upstairs and you have the same thing plus. You have 2 more classrooms and 2 more seminar rooms. There's an elevator that takes you up there. And then on the top floor, you have photovoltaic cells, and you have vents to let air come through these. I'll go back. You can see in the circulation area, there are cutouts so that air can come in through the classrooms, come out into the corridor, which is sort of a meeting place as well as a movement place, and then it can go up vertically into the ceiling, out the roof. Can you see that? Okay, it's a little funny. I don't know why it doesn't fit on the thing. But this is an exploded isometric of the ground floor. You can see there's an auditorium, a coon, an open exhibition area, a service core for toilets, and the lawn. And then the next floor we have large classrooms, regular classrooms, and 4 seminar rooms. And then you get the top floor with 2 more classrooms, 6 classrooms, and 6 seminar rooms, and 2 large halls. And then you get the roof structure. So you get the whole thing where you can see it in isometric. So basically that gives you an idea of what the relationships are between the floors and between the site. One of the things you may notice, there are panels on the outside of the building, which are actually sliding panels of louvers. So you can close the whole panels when it's really hot and the sun doesn't touch the glass which is inside of that. Or you can slide them open if you want fresh air to come through and if you want better view. We found at India House that having louvers or having a jolly doesn't cut the vision at all. You can still see out very nicely, but it's good to stop the sun coming in. It's good to create a pocket between the glass and the outside to cool off the building. It's just good as an environmental thing. Now, the next building to me is a building which I love. It's Doshi's School of Architecture. So in looking at the heights, we tried to mimic or keep our heights the same. So our building has the same scale when you're in the lawn and you look at the School of Architecture. The heights of this building are the same, and possibly the structural system will have some sort of a link to that. So we're trying to mirror or be part of the School of Architecture. It's a very important, I would say, international modern heritage site. When I think of heritage, I I'm happy to see Professor Basada sitting here, who almost single-handedly made this city into a heritage city. But you know, they say that all successes have many fathers and failures are orphanages, no? So for years it was an orphan, and then suddenly Waseda is famous and everybody's doing YouTube shots of themselves making this into a heritage city. Okay, this gives you an idea. Is it showing? It's supposed to be cute. Okay, this is the sun. This is what the guys in my office do when I went to Delhi over the weekend to give a lecture, and I come back and see this kind of stuff. Well, it's kind of nice. It shows that ambient light comes in through the jalis, and the heavy sunlight is reflected off, hopefully a lot of the heat also. And also, this same jali, another cute one, lets the hot air go out through this passageway and lets the regular air come through. So it's a pretty simple building. It's ground plus 2. It's got photovoltaic cells on the roof. It's got an envelope around it, which sort of keeps the sun out, and also it slides back and forth. So it's kind of interactive with the time of year, the seasons. It's kind of a fun thing, and very simple elevations. In a way, I feel it's a little different than a lot of my architecture. There's nothing iconic in this building. It's what I would call anonymous architecture. My idea is that Doshi's building is the iconic building. My building is kind of a backdrop. So when you're walking down the promenade, the big iconic building from 1960s is there. And this building becomes kind of a very pleasant, kind of a anonymous backdrop with a nice entrance, a kind of a exciting entrance. It links with the lawn. Now, what I forgot to tell you is, on the first floor, 2 of the seminar rooms, actually their doors slide open and you can walk out onto the lawn. So if you see this model, you can see on the left there's a little platform that comes out by the lawn, and I'm going to extend the lawn further down to the building and link the two together, so that when you're on the first floor and you want to go out onto the mound directly, you can just walk through one of the 2 seminar rooms and you can walk out onto the lawn. Or you can walk down between the School of Architecture and the lawn in a kind of a promenade, which goes like that from the entrance. Huh? And then you have a kind of welcoming, open 2-story portico. And like, pretty simple. I'll show you some better images. This is a model. This gives a rough idea of the components. It just shows that there's a movable jali screen, and that there's good glass behind it, and there's a terrace with photovoltaic cells, etc. It's a very simple system of an envelope, and then sliding glass doors behind there. And these are some green measures. My eyesight isn't good enough to read all of those, but I just want you to rest assured that we will try to make this a very sustainable piece of architecture. And I'm talking with our committee about getting on board a consultant to make this a great green building. Now, ambiance. What does it look like? What does it feel like? So this is I hope it came out okay. Yeah, it's a perspective of the lawn. As you can see the School of Architecture, and then you get these basically screens which slide back and forth. And then you come down from the entrance and you come to this promenade. So this will be kind of a new public domain. It's there now, but I want to make it more lively, and you'll have, I don't know, you could have more than 1,000 people in this building at one time. That's almost as many students as we have on campus today. So we need more open space, more interactive spaces. So this space in front of the School of Architecture would become more interactive. And then, of course, it moves under the School of Architecture into the plaza. So there are a lot of connectivity and porous features from an urban design viewpoint looking through. Now, you can walk upstairs to the first floor, and even you can walk across on the left. You can see the bridge coming from the canteen, which is here. I don't like the handrail, incidentally. The architect who did this handrail is really bad. We need a better handrail. But anyway, that will happen. There will be concrete pillars holding up the structure, and then these louvers you can see. And it's rather simple. Now, that's the side of the... I'm putting... Wait a minute, I'm not finished. See this. It says CEPT at ccba.in. If either I'm too difficult to handle today and you still want to ask me a question, you please write to what? CEPT at ccba.in. And I will answer you, even if you're nasty. So now what I'm going to show you, why Charyu was jumping up to help me, is a walkthrough. Do I need to push something or you need to push something? You need to push something. I think it's... Okay, thank you very much.
I'll pull out the presentation once again and then we can,
Okay.
in case you want to go back to anything.
I think just put up one of the, go to ambiance, go way down to some, go to one of these, go to down, this image here. Leave that on. That's a good image. I would be interested in your questions, comments. Thank you, Chair. So I'll sit down. I'll ask the president may answer some questions related to the campus and overall things. So I think Bimal and I will have a seat, and then we would love to hear your comments and questions.
Questions?
Hello. Is there a microphone for somebody asking the question? Somebody, Catherine. Siddharth. Somebody known to me. Put up your hand if you have a question. Let's see a hand up. Then I'll go have a drink. Okay, good.
Hello, good evening. I'm Hari from Mayar, and I have a question regarding the orientation of the building. Why is it oriented east-west, the longer sides, not as the other buildings at CEPT, which are north-south oriented?
Okay, that's a good question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Basically, first of all, I had no choice. I had the lawn, and you people would kill me if I put an east-west long building running across your grass. So I thought we can definitely change. This building we're sitting in, incidentally, has a north-south run. So it's not that all the buildings on the campus are east-west, but to me, it was more, if you saw the way we tried to orient around the trees, we wanted to keep away from School of Architecture. You know, there were times when they felt like banging the building, even attaching it to the School of Architecture and continuing that section through. So in the early studies, we were looking at just extending School of Architecture, putting the same skylights, making an extension. Then we gave that up. And then we were looking at the place where the water gathers, looking at your lawn, and then we had these 3 trees. So if you really see the design process, that it was an evolution. It wasn't a decision like we will make it north, south, or east, or west. You get my point? Thank you for being so cooperative. But it's a good question, because I think what I think one of the implications is you don't decide that a building runs east, west, north, south like that unless you're a planner and you're trying to make everybody fall in some sort of a dictatorial system. But if you're looking at a site which has a strong context, you're looking at the hinge, you're looking at Doshi's building, you're looking at the lawn, you're looking at maybe taking that water problem and turning it into an asset, you're looking at a connection with the canteen. So it sort of evolves out of some rational, hopefully rational thinking. And I think as designers, instead of starting at the beginning of the design and saying it will be east-west, it will be this kind of shape, we need to get used to responding to different conundrum, puzzles, the puzzle of its location on the thing, the puzzle of the climate, the puzzle of how people move through the thing. So all of these puzzles, which I, in a sense, tried to show in that round diagram, start to mold your thinking into what the design should be. Anything else? I think you all want to go dance Garba. Bemo, do you have any questions? He's been looking at this as it grows over the last year. So, arguing, there's somebody like that.
So what implication do you imagine the orientation to have on the light in the studios, or however the spaces are to be used, the classrooms? The orientation being, the longer side facing either west or east. Also in the auditorium, because the only source of light, the only surface left to bring in light would be the west. And since the east is covered completely by the lawn. So just what implication do you think this will have on the light quality within the spaces?
Let's start in the basement. Actually, we would have dark panels which slide across. The idea is that you can either open it up or you can close it. If you want to have it in the evening, if you want to put lights outside in that stepped area, or even if you want to open the doors and let people sit out there, some more informal kind of program. So basically auditoriums want to be like this. They don't actually really want to have windows. But I'll tell you a secret, there's a place nearby called the AMA, and upstairs in the first auditorium there, they had these lovely sliding panels that opened up round windows? And I thought that's lovely, that you're in a dark space like this, but you have some choice to slide panels and open up and close light. And here we thought, why not give a really big, the whole wall can slide back, and you can look out into a sunken garden. Basically, auditoriums often want to be dark. Sometimes they want to be light if you have a student meeting or maybe even a sort of an informal gathering. But you need to be able to control the light. Now upstairs, if you face buildings east, west, north, south, you have problems. If you do it the long way facing south, the rooms on the south side get way too much light. And believe it or not, in India on the north side, you also get a huge amount of glare. And we've tried to do buildings where we have the north natural glass, and the south we put louvers or jollies, and then the client comes back and says it's just too bright in the north. Even in my studio, which faces north, and everybody says studios north light is the best thing, I have louvers, and in the afternoon around 3 o'clock I tell the guys, Siddharth used to be in the studio, I yell, would somebody please close those damn louvers? I can't see across the studio, it's so bright. So our rooms in India need to have adjustable light. And that's why we're putting sliding screens with louvers. We could put fixed screens and have adjustable louvers, which work perfectly well by hand. But I think your question leads to a conclusion that we don't need a solution for louvers. We need something which is movable, something which works with different seasons. If it's dark in the monsoon, or if it's very bright in the summertime, how do you change these louvers? That's why we have this facade. Our envelope, I would prefer that name, is not a facade because it's not put there to look pretty. It's put there as a living kind of envelope, which reflects the lighting conditions. I think it's a very good question because light becomes a huge problem. Either it's too much. Generally in India during the daytime it's too much. In the evening are dark days in Pune. Like now, even now it's raining in Pune. It's very dark, so we need more light. So maybe buildings should be like living things. They should be able to adapt to night and day, and for winter, etc. But wherever we orient it, we're going to have problems.
Hey, okay. So the minute we flatten the lawn, right? We are doing that. What happens
The
to
minute we do what? The minute we do what?
flatten the contours of the lawn? What happens to the identity of CEPT? Like, how does that change or address? Because right now, I think even Snapchat uses the lawn as the identity for CEPT.
Even who uses it?
Snapchat.
Okay, listen. First of all, we're not slicing it. We're extending it. It's going to be bigger. It's the existing lawn is going to extend towards the west. We could let it slope down, but we're just going to slope down to a wall in the auditorium. So we thought, why not have it a little longer and let it line up with the first floor so that 2 of the seminar rooms, you can go outside in the afternoon when it's not so sunny there. Maybe in the winter you can go outside and have seminars outside. Or who knows, maybe we would leave one of the seminar rooms open as a passage, and you can always walk out onto the lawn. So we're not slicing the lawn. We're not making it smaller. In fact, we'll make it bigger.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, the dip is getting lost, right?
Getting what?
The dip, the area between the 2 mounds. Okay.
See,
or
I
maybe
assure you of one thing. I love her as much as you do. I will protect her, okay?
I think you raise a sort of a broader issue which needs addressing. You say that that the campus has an identity which we are all proud of in many ways, and you are apprehensive about that identity changing, perhaps getting lost. I think that's general. I mean, that's understandable. But we must remember that the identity of CEPT campus has continually evolved. If you saw it 30 years ago, there wasn't this building, and at that time you felt this was on the edge of town, and this was a completely different place. There was just one building, and in fact, there were just 150 students, and the identity of CEPT was 150 students. It was a small family. Everybody knew everybody. 30 of them had gone for training, so there were only 120. Today, we take in 80 students in the first batch. Somebody who comes from that time will be horrified that the identity of CEPT is not what it used to be earlier. I think we have. I mean, the real issue is that the identity is not a fixed and static thing. It's something that evolves and changes. And I think what Christopher is promising is that he loves CEPT, and he will take care that its identity is molded in ways that remain something that all of us can like. But I don't think we need to be scared about changing the identity. That's it's silly to hang on to one identity and insist that it's going to remain like that forever.
Actually, the mound has an interesting history, and the water hole has the same history. At some point, somebody tried to make bricks out in front, and they dug earth looking for mud and made our lawn, our mound, no? And they gave us a beautiful mound and a terrible water hole that floods. So that the whole thing, there's an interesting book, actually Anuradha Mathur wrote on landscape, telling how landscape changes over time with development. But actually that mound and that hole relate to a much earlier life this campus had. And I think it's a very interesting history. But believe me, I also like the lawn a lot.
I think it looks beautiful. Like, I just want to go out there and just sit there. Like, so
Me too. I'd like to have no buildings here, just the mound.
Yeah.
No.
I have
just, this is an image. Maybe you're worried about there are two things. We'll keep those, don't we? We'll keep the camera. And I like the way you started. Your question didn't start as a question. It started with so, like so Benninger. You're going to ruin my...
Yeah. I have 4 things to mention. One is the forest jungle actually acts as a buffer zone. So when you cut down that, what interventions are you doing to avoid noise and things like that? Second, relation of the building with the active corner of the road. Third, the kun doesn't have a visual connection with the activity mass in the campus. So because the L is oriented such a way that the kund is actually facing outwards. So that. And the fourth one is interventions in front of the FA building. Are you also removing other spatial qualities like the old champa tree? Yeah.
No, I love the old champa trees. In fact, if you saw pictures of my campus in Pune, I copied the champa trees and put them in my courtyard also. Can you hear me? See, on the main road, University Road, I call it out here. Actually, that facade only has skylights. It doesn't have any windows. Those large 80-seater classrooms, we might even slightly step them, have a dead wall facing the road. And then the reason we kept that Kund area open was because it could be a very noisy area. So we would keep heavy planting around at the corner. But our idea is to take what is basically kind of a leftover space now. I'm calling it a Kund. It is not a Kund now. It's just a kind of a jungle with a hole. And we want to develop that as a landscape work. And that's, we haven't done the landscape for that yet. But I see it as a future asset. Now, how does it connect with the rest of the campus? If you notice, the entrance, or the hinge as I call it, is ground +1, and then it goes out into the Kund. So even if you're coming from the canteen, down the stairs or across the bridge, you can look through the building into the Kund. So visually, we're actually creating a connection which doesn't exist right now. Right now, there's no connection to that corner at all. It's kind of a lost edge of the campus. I don't think, except for people in love, nobody here ever goes there. And it's not a very heavily visited part of the campus. Okay, I don't know what happens there. Maybe heavy research is going on. But anyway, I think these are all I think they're all valid questions now, and they're things that what I've shown you is called a concept design. And as we develop the design, I think these are things we would address. And I would. Your question had 4 parts. Can you write to CEPT@ccbe.in and put those 4 points so we remember them?
Good evening. Would it be possible to have some form of partial shading device in the passage in the promenade that you have on the northern side of the Faculty of Architecture? Because it does tend to get very hot during the daytime, and I feel having a partial shading system that didn't rely on vegetation to cast a shadow would increase the time of usage of that particular promenade. And also, would it be possible to have a sheltered passageway that would connect these buildings, that would protect the users from rainfall and other sunlight during the course of the year?
Okay, I think those are very interesting questions. A lot of it relating to the campus plan, and a lot of it to landscaping. See, putting anything in front of School of Architecture, to me, is a very dicey question. You may like to have a, say, pergola, or maybe somebody else would like to have trees. Somebody else would say the School of Architecture itself is giving shade. So I think it's a question which we need to look at. I think it's a valid question. But I always find it interesting in India. I've designed probably 20 different campuses now. In America, where I studied at Harvard and MIT and Florida, none of the buildings are connected by covered passageways. It's snowing, it's raining, it's minus 20 degrees. And at Harvard, people walk between these buildings and they're not much bothered about it. But in India, it rains 3-4 months of the year, which I think is beautiful. And people don't want to walk in the rain. They don't like umbrellas or something. So to me, it's a very interesting kind of cultural problem that it actually only rains here. To me, the sun is a bigger issue. If I want a covered pathway, it would be to be covered from the sun. But to me, it's a campus-wide issue. My building that I'm designing has a open portico with a shaded area, but I can't say that I would shade the entire campus because I want to do that. But I think it's worth thinking about. Frankly, if I go stand in front of the School of Architecture now, I don't know if the villains are in this room, but somebody has put some very ugly metal structures projecting out from the elevation. And that to me is more shocking than things that we've done collectively to try to make this a better campus, which go on the web as big sins against humanity and heritage. But if you look at the front of that building, we need to clean it up. That would be my first prayer. Let's get the School of Architecture looking like the classic building it looked like when I came here in 1968, and see how we can make it look what it is. It's a great building.
Thank you.
That's just on that note. The School of Architecture building, the Faculty of Architecture building, it is really an icon of modern architecture in the country, internationally also. And it is in very, very poor shape. And in fact, there is a program, perhaps starting next year, to make a structural repairs for the entire building. Besides the look of it, the building is in very poor shape from a structural point of view. We just completed an audit. Professor R.J. Shah, who many of you may remember, is the person who made the audit, and it's estimated that we'll need approximately 2 crore rupees to sort of just do the structural repairs for that building. In many places the concrete is falling and needs to be redone. But yes, that's on the cards, and yes, that will get done. It is just extremely important, and we are going to start work on it perhaps a year from now.
Now, what I like though is that people are thinking of the whole campus. They're thinking about how you move in the campus, shading moving places. I think these are important things to think about. To me, it's also interesting, like, what kind of furniture will we put in this building? And I had some of the students from the furniture course come down to Pune last week, and I was telling them, maybe your faculty, I'm sticking my nose in the didactics of set. Maybe they could do a studio and design furniture for the new building. Maybe the landscape department could look at the promenade and look at what are the options in terms of, do you want to put shading? Do you want to put waterproofing? Do you want to just leave it open? How do you want to do that? So I think a lot of what's nice about a design school is that you're all handling real problems, and every problem around these buildings, including the heritage part, are design problems. And I think that they can be taken up either in the summer school or winter school or sometime, if nothing more, just for fun, to see what the options are. Okay, have fun at the Gerba.